I'd love to start you off with, since you're the brain guy, I want to ask you, how do you think right now this shelter in place and social distancing is actually affecting our brains?
Yeah. I mean, I think, historically, this never happened, where the whole planet is experiencing the same level, the same stressor, if you will, especially at the size and scope. So it's kind of unprecedented. I would imagine a lot of people who are tuning in, they feel like with all this physical distancing that they are alone. The metaphor I'm using right now is that of a butterfly, where it's the ultimate transformation, right? When the caterpillar feels like it's the end of the world, it becomes that butterfly. But while the beauty is in the butterfly, the growth happens in the cocoon, and we feel like we're cocooning. And one of the challenges to our mind is like, we're alone with our thoughts. I mean, we're alone with our doubts. We're alone with our fears. And we might be feeling alone, and loneliness is an epidemic. The challenges that has on our nervous system, is on the rise. I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing a lot of symptoms of mental health issues, in this, because we know chronic stress shrinks your brain. We know chronic fear actually suppresses your immune system. So it makes you more susceptible to viruses, to flus, to colds. It's a whole area of science called psychoneuroimmunology. And so, the media certainly doesn't help with everything that bleeds or leads, and people choosing to focus on that. It just makes it even more difficult, because there's an algorithm to that, and you start looking for everything that's dark and scary and threatening. And if you're in fight and flight and freeze all the time, you're not going to be able to create, this the life that you desire, the life that you deserve, under those circumstances. So I think more than ever, do we need to prioritize not just physical hygiene, but also mental hygiene. Like physical hygiene, we should be spending, 6 months, six feet apart, washing our hands, sanitize everything. But I think people really need to be very vigilant about standing guard to their mind and monitoring their their mental hygiene as well as their physical.
What are some good practices for that? I've never heard that before, that term, mental hygiene.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in the book Limitless, it has, I have this quote from a French philosopher that says, life is the C between B and D. Life is C between B and D, and B stands for birth and D stands for death. C, life, stands for choice. And there are simple choices that we can make, that our life is the sum total of all the choices that we've all made up to this point. And where are we going to live? What are we going to do? Are we going to, cocoon? Are we not? Or what are we going to eat? What are we going to feed our minds? Just who we can spend time with. So there are 5 choices that I would focus on while we're cocooning, so we could come out stronger and smarter and better. And I'm not discounting anything anyone is feeling. I'm saying that, again, this is a different kind of human experience. And so we're going to feel like a whole spectrum of emotions. But 5 choices we can make while we're cocooning for better mental hygiene and mental health. I would say, number 1, clarity. Using this time to reconnect with what's most important to us in life. And people might hear a siren because I'm actually cocooning in New York City, which is interesting, in terms of what's going on with mental hygiene.
Yeah.
Number 1 is clarity, and asking yourself this simple question: what's most important to me in life? Because sometimes, before this, where we were going a million miles an hour, now we're taking a global pause. We have time to check in with ourselves. And maybe when you're racing your car every single day, you don't check in with yourself to say, am I going in the right direction? This idea where we're climbing the ladder of success, we're being extremely efficient about it. And then we get to the top of the ladder, and what if we're leaning on the wrong wall? Right. And so solitude is a great time for self-reflection. And to get self-reflection, I would get into your core values. And the clarifying question is, what's most important to me in life? What's most important to me in a career? What's most important to me in a job? What's most important to me in my impact? What's most important to me in my family, my relationships, in my health? And reconnecting with our values, and then asking yourself a second clarifying question, because connecting with your values will give you strength. That clarity gives you power. Second question is, are my actions aligned with those values? Because if people are self-sabotaging If they're taking one step forward and leaps back, usually it's because the things we're doing aren't aligned with those things that are most important to us. And then that's why we're in this kind of fight, tug, pull constantly. And it's hard to be in alignment with ourselves internally. And sometimes that we don't question what our values are, and sometimes they've changed over time, but this is a great time to connect with ourselves. So that's clarity. Second choice that you can make that while you're cocooning, good for your performance and your just peace of mind, is care. We know self-care is not selfish. And when it comes to mental hygiene, I mean, you and I, we've all talked in the previous episode on best brain foods and optimizing your sleep. And what I would say for mental hygiene, choices of what you're going to input into your brain, who you're going to spend time with, who you're going to listen to. That my challenge with people who are overindulging in media, because if it bleeds, it leads. We know media is a business like any other business, and the product is viewers and listeners. And so I would say that you don't tune in if at 7:00 to find out how many people fell in love and how many people had children and gave birth to all this great news, but you tune in if you're going to die. The 7 ways you're going to die today, tune in at 11, you're going to tune in. And the challenge is, just as your as Instagram has an algorithm, if you happen to engage with every workout post, like, share, watch all those workout videos, Instagram is going to show you a lot more workout video posts. Same thing with your mind. Your mind has an algorithm, and if you just feed it what's dark and scary and threatening, it just starts feeding you everything that's dark, threatening, and scary, much like the background noise of what's going on here in the city. And then you just start seeing that all through your mental news feed. And the challenge is you have a limited bandwidth, and you're not going to be, that means you're not putting energy and focus into possibility. You're not putting focus into opportunity. You're not putting focus into what you'll be grateful for, and those kind of things. So that's what I mean more about mental hygiene, choosing what's going inside your mind on a regular basis and being really vigilant on standing guard to your mind. And I'm not saying just be positive, you could know, I think it's important to know what's going on so you can make good decisions. I'm just saying the overindulgence will put you in fight or flight or freeze, and you're not going to have quality life that way. So you have clarity, of care. Third C, contribution. I think the antidote to chronic fear or feeling scared is service. And so the question to get your contribution is, how can you invest some of your time, your talent, your treasure to making a difference? You guys know my story, right? Like, it's just, I grew up with learning challenges. I had deathly afraid of public speaking, phobia, or a lot of people say they're scared of public speaking. They're not really. Like, compared to me, my heart, I would pass out. My heart was beating out of my chest. I would hyperventilate. I wouldn't know what to do. And so I would do a book report, but if a teacher asked me to present it, I would lie. And I'd say I didn't do it. So I even get to talk about butterflies before I go on stage still. But the moment I just focus on the audience, serving them, then this fear disappears. And so I would say, how can you contribute right now to the world? Like right now with our proceeds for my first book, Limitless, we're donating 100% to build schools for children who don't have access to education. So we're also providing healthcare, clean water, because that keeps kids out of school in these challenging areas. Also, we're donating monies towards Alzheimer's research, and because in memory of my grandmother who passed of Alzheimer's. But on social media, we're doing like student programs that for free. We're doing Recession Proof Your Brain for people who have lost their jobs on Instagram and Facebook. But how can you contribute in a unique way to get out of that fear? Because I think like calling up a neighbor could be as simple as checking on somebody who's older and more vulnerable, be preparing for some food for people who are on the front lines, but service. And so I think that's an antidote to fear and get your mental hygiene straight. So clarity, care, contribution. Finally, 2 more C's, creativity. I feel like a lot of people, they're not burnt out because they're doing too much. A lot of people are burnt out because they're doing too little. It makes them feel alive. And I think part of being alive is creating. And so it was during the Great Plague that William Shakespeare wrote some of his greatest works. Macbeth, Antony, and Cleopatra. It was when they shut down London during the plague that Isaac Newton had to physically distance himself. And sound familiar? He was sitting underneath a tree at his yard, and an apple fell on his head, and came up with the theories of motion, the theories of gravity. And I'm not saying we have to create those kind of things, but you could create that blog, you create that music, you create that business, you could create You could write a little bit each day. You could do something creative. And by the way, even before what's going on in the world, jobs were going to AI, artificial intelligence. They were going to machines. They were going to automation. And what's not going to be outsourced is your creativity. When I talk about limitless, I believe the limitless resource on planet Earth is human potential. Like, it's not the sky's the limit. It's more our minds are the limit. There's no limit to your creativity. There's no limit to your imagination. There's no limit to, humans be able to come together, or human determination, and follow through. And so, I would double down on creativity, because I believe the future belongs to creatives, and this could be a personal renaissance for each of us. And then finally, the last C, after clarity, care, contribution, creativity, capability. If you want to be able to take control of your mind, one of the things you can do is just, you have your to-do list, you have a to-learn list. What are the things on your to-learn list? You've always said, when I have some time, I'll do that. When I have some focus, I'll do that. Is it Spanish, salsa, speed reading? We have unfettered access to the world's information, YouTube, podcasts. And I think if someone's going to level up in any capability, it's learning how to learn. And that's why I wrote this book, because I think if there's one skill where jobs are being disrupted and economies are changing, you have to learn a new career or subject or skill set. Learn how to learn, because if you can learn how to learn, which means how to focus, how to read faster, how to improve your memory, how to make good decisions, how to study technical material, then you could apply that towards money, management, marketing, martial arts, music, Mandarin, anything. Everything gets easier. So,
Jim, we have a lot of people, a lot of listeners right now that have been shaken up with the shelter in place and are now parents that are teachers for the first time in their life. They've never had to school their kids from home, and a lot of them are struggling. What are some tools from Limitless that you can provide for these parents that are struggling with this?
That's a great question. So the whole book you could apply towards children. And we could talk about the limitless model, which is really the whole framework of not only accelerated learning, but for unlocking human potential, both in yourself, your family, your team, your community, and such. Right now, it's for parents who've never really sat down and been teachers. That is quite an experience, quite a hat to be able to have, and a responsibility. And then how are you going to do that and also manage your business and work? And so none of this is easy. It is. Some of the things are very simple, but it's that simple, but it's also that difficult also as well. I would say one of the important things, I'll add another C to the list, because all 5 of those could be applied towards children, is consistency. I think it's extremely important as a parent or somebody working, or you're managing your team at home, is to have structure, because those constraints it's ironic, because those limits will actually make you more limitless. When you have constraints on your time or your money or some kind of resources, it forces concentration, it forces creativity, it forces commitment. And so I think routines are very important, educational routines. We talked about in the previous episode that first you create your habits and then your habits create you. Now, this is crazy, this background noise, because this is never like that. I don't know if you guys are picking this up, but this is actually, if this makes the edits right now, because this is real, this is raw, This is extremely relevant right now. This is a test on your focus and concentration. And we do a whole chapter on focus and focus development. That focus is a muscle. And most people are actually building their distraction muscles nowadays with every ring, ping, ding, social media alert, app notification, stuff like that. So I would encourage everybody, when distractions come, either in this conversation or elsewhere, is to really hone your focus. Going back to working with kids, certainly your focus is being tested. And I think having structure, having routines for them and for yourself is very important. Having set times is incredibly important, in terms of not only asking yourself the question as you're listening to this, how can I apply this? Why must I apply this? But also, when will I apply this? Having actual teaching times. And then also teaching them the things that are in the book that we've discussed before: how to read faster, how to improve their memory, how to study. You go to kids and you expect them to be able to focus, because you go to kids and you're like, focus, or you go to kids and say, study. And it's like going to a child and say, play the piano, who's never had a class in playing the piano. they've never had a class on how to focus. They've never had a class on how to remember things. They've never had a class on how to study. So I think an important thing that would give your children an advantage is teaching them how to learn as opposed to what to learn. And this is an opportune time to do that. Right now, is going through and teaching them how to read faster. I'm teaching them how to focus, teaching them how to study better, teaching them the best brain foods, teaching them how to, and especially, routines that we've talked about, and you've had experts on your show before, whether it's Max Luger talking about genius foods or people who are experts on sleep, really managing their sleep. All that. Everyone wants to know the pill. I mean, the book is called Limitless. Some people think of the movie. You guys saw the movie, right? With Bradley Cooper.
Great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the pill, you take the pill, he goes from 0 to hero, and he can have focus. He has this incredible memory, he learns these languages, he follows through. But it's a surge, right? It's a surge of motivation. But after the pill wears off, 24 hours later, he loses that motivation. So in the book, I have a 3-step formula also for motivation, for sustainable motivation, which is not like hyping yourself up, but also you could apply it towards yourself, again, your team, but especially your children, how to motivate them to study, how to motivate them to clean their room, how to motivate them to always be learning.
Now, these are just concepts, right? This is an actual curriculum that you provided them?
This is a curriculum. Yeah, this
nice.
is this is the closest thing that I've ever created for a textbook. I waited 28 years to publish this work, and this book primarily, it's interesting, I haven't talked about this, but when I was writing it, this book was 100% methodology. It was based on the 5 superpowers I think every age and stage of life should have. And it's all around meta learning. And I was actually going to title it Meta Learning. Meta learning means learning how to learn. But then I realized that having learning in the main title is just not something people
it's not
attractive.
Right?
Not attractive.
not at all. So I was like, Limitless. Yes, that's it. We wanted something. And Dr. Mark Hyman wrote the foreword of the book. And he's like, in the foreword, he says, there is no genius pill, but there is a process for genius. And Jim shows you, that process for your best brain, your brightest future. But the book is full of processes, methods on the 5 superpowers. The first one is focus, because how are you going to concentrate in a world full of all these crazy distractions? The second chapter is on studying. How do you study technical material and really understand it? Third one's on memory, which is the largest chapter. I actually wrote that in Greece. And holy smokes.
They're out to get you.
It's never been like this. It's so crazy. Memory, I actually wrote in Greece because I found out the goddess of memory, her children, the 9 muses of literature, science, and arts, which is interesting. The mother of science, literature, and art is memory. And I found out these ancient memory techniques that I was really inspired. So I wrote it there. And then the final 2 chapters and methods was speed reading and critical thinking skills. And the critical thinking skills, we've talked about digital supervillains before, digital distraction, digital deluge, overload, digital dementia. But I coined another term called digital deduction, where it's interesting that going back to children, when they're tested, they have lower analytical abilities than previous generations, and they're attributing that to technology because they're growing up on technology that's telling them just what to think. So they never have to develop their critical thinking skills, their ability to rationalize or analyze, divergent thinking, because everything's being spoon-fed for us in terms of what to think. We're not taught how to think. But going back to methodology, when I was ready, the book was done. It was a great textbook manual curriculum on how to learn anything faster. And before I hit send, I asked myself, to my publisher, the question is are 100% of the people going to get the results of this program that they're hoping for? And my honest answer was no, because a lot of people know methods, but they don't do it, because knowledge alone is not power. All the podcasts, programs, coaching, none of it works unless we work. And so I realized that it was missing 2 elements. And I developed this limitless model as a framework for really accelerated learning and unlocking human potential. Because somebody can have the method for remembering names, stuff we've talked about in the previous episode, but if their mindset is I'm stupid, or I'm too old, or I'm not smart enough, they're still going to be stuck in that box. And so we're trying to develop this framework for everybody to be able to have a lens for themselves, for their children, for their teams, to see how we could redraw the borders and boundaries of what we believe is possible in our life.
Now, do you have any examples of high profile people or anything you've used these concepts with and they've really ran with it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't I mean, we give a couple examples in the book, with Jim Carrey and Will Smith and some individuals that I've been just very public about. Some of them, it's like with anybody coming to a coach, they have their stuff, and so it's a little bit more personal and such. I mean, but really in the book, you guys know the hero's journey, right? From like Joseph Campbell, he's really popularized the hero's journey, the themes that are consistent between like Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. I take people through those stages, so I really make them the star of it. So when we're talking about famous individuals, I make them I know some people are watching on video, but these are the 4 stages of the hero's journey that, if you take the Matrix, it's the program where they take people from the ordinary, they take them in the extraordinary, and I take people through these 4 phases where I make them Neo, or they are Luke Skywalker, and I'm like Yoda. You know what I mean? Or Mr. Miyagi, or whoever the mentor is along the journey as they fight these dragons and they level up skills. And then it's interesting because the last phase is them going back into the Matrix, or from the extraordinary back into the ordinary. And even when you think about Matrix, when Keanu Reeves goes back into the Matrix at the end, and he makes that phone call to the Matrix and says, something to the effect like, I'm going to show everybody what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without limits. I'm going to show them a world where anything is possible. And they bring that elixir, that treasure, back into the ordinary. And so it's kind of similar to what I talk about. You learn so you could earn, so you could return. You learn so you could benefit from it, but then you also learn so how you could teach it to other people and share that strength.
Jim, I want to take you back to the parents. You glazed over something earlier about service, and I really like this because I've talked to a lot of people that are struggling with work right now, and they're doing things out of desperation to try and generate revenue. And you kind of alluded to the importance of getting back to how can I serve, right? And I really think that will serve you in business. But what about those that are facing unemployment and may not have a job right now? What are some tips that you can give to these people?
Yeah. First of all, for people who are struggling right now, I mean, again, I would start with kindness, first of all. Studies done in self-compassion where we're beating ourselves up and feel hopeless, that does no one any good. And so when I say life is a C between B and D, again, B is birth, D is death, C is choice. Like making the choice of what to focus on right now is so important. So I'll just state that is just that kindness, instead of beating yourself up and saying, and going into that spiral of hopelessness, that doesn't benefit anybody and doesn't change our circumstance. That being said, I know people are struggling, and it is extremely difficult times. And I know that through, everybody has survived. Like I want everyone to think about that time when we didn't think we would survive, and yet we did. And so just remember, how far you've come, and that you are stronger than anything you're facing. That's easy to hear. And I'll be the first to say that. And I hope everyone listening to this, I send you, strength and safety and, security and abundance, whatever it is you need right now. What I would say is small, simple steps is that thinking is good, but overthinking it and trying to get from like where you are right now to absolutely perfect is very difficult. The key really is to break things down in the smallest, simplest steps so you're not overloaded and overwhelmed. Right now, if you lost your job, you don't know, you're home with or you have your job and somebody has to watch the kids, you're being stretched, your resources are being Jim, like how are you going to be limitless in a limited world? And one of the ways we do it is we do it together, right? Like right now, and this is another thing with labels, is like the words we use affect our brain and affect our performance. And right now we aren't socially distancing, even though that's a phrase we commonly use. We're being socially, all of us right now, we're physically distancing ourselves, but we're not socially distancing ourselves. I get concerned when these individuals People are mentally distancing themselves, or they're emotionally distancing themselves. I think more than ever, it's important to have community. And that's why, and also it's very important to feed your mind positive things to drown out, all the negativity and everything that's threatening. So listening to this podcast would be a small, simple step for people, because as viruses are contagious and as fear is contagious, so is positivity, so is performance, right? And so I would feed your mind good things, and then I would literally break things down into the smallest, simplest steps right now. And one of the things that questions that you could put towards it to get you out of paralysis or fear, fight, flight, freezing, which is not going to help anybody, is saying, what is the tiniest action I could take right now to give me progress towards this goal? So tiny I can't fail. You know what I mean? These small, I call them S3s, small, simple steps. Because little by little, a little becomes a lot. And so if your goal is right now, you lost your job, I'd be thinking about, it's hard to talk to somebody about, when we're talking about the Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization, when people don't have survival, right? So let's make sure we're taken care of, and that that we can do whatever we can to get the bills paid and food on the table and a roof over our head. And I would say, okay, get clarity, because it can be very threatening. And when you're in fight or flight, you're not thinking really well. You're not making your best decisions. And so take care of yourself. All the stuff the 5 C's we talk about: care, contribute, all this stuff. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It could be 10 minutes on care, 10 minutes for going for a walk and meditating, or doing an ice bath, or doing something to help reset yourself, managing your state throughout this entire thing, knowing we always can decide and have a choice about how we think about things, what things are meaning right now, and what are we going to do, in terms of when I talk about this limitless model. And so manage your state, most importantly, because people are watching you, right? Your kids are watching you, and ask yourself, who's counting on me to be at my best today? Who's counting on me to show up with my A game today? Reconnecting with your purpose, and then making sure you're cared for, so you have plenty of energy to follow through, and then breaking it down into small, simple steps. And so let's tackle the problem. You have this bill, or you want to start this business. What is a tiny domino, one thing that you could do to be able to create momentum or change, right? And then if you break it down into small things, even if you're breaking down things that are good for your care, we know exercising is good for everybody, but some people have never exercised before, maybe that's too big. So maybe their small, simple step is not exercising an hour a day, or sales calls an hour a day, fill in the blank, reading, studying an hour a day. Maybe it's putting on your running shoes. That's a small, simple step. Maybe it's opening up your book on marketing. That's a small, simple step. All right. And so I would say manage your state, because that's our learning is state dependent, so is life, and then breaking down to small, simple steps to get you there. So it's not overwhelming and where you're not frozen.
Now, oftentimes situations like this leave people thinking that they may need to learn new skills. Maybe the job market's going to look different when things reopen, or things get more, kind of back to normal. We see this in the fitness space. A lot of brick and mortar gyms are having to change the way that they operate. So people may be thinking that they need to learn new skills so that they can, become relevant in the workforce as things start to change and morph. What are some ways people can learn new skills quickly? Because I feel like there might be a time crunch for some people.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. And so I believe that the goal is capability, going back to that 5th C, that it's not about shrinking our dreams or our goals to meet this current situation. It's about upgrading our skills and capabilities and our determination, our faith, our patience to be able to meet those goals. And so this is an opportune time to do that. And again, going back to opportunity, first of all, we have to shift our focus from fear to opportunity, right? Because that mindset shift changes a lot. And then I would go into thinking about what are the skills that I need to be able to achieve that goal or to be relevant today. I mentioned one of the master skills is learning how to learn. So how could you learn how to learn a new skill? And so one of the keys is you work backwards, and then you break things down into chunks. Because what I do is you take a skill. You can take a skill called dance. You can take a skill called coding, even video game, trainer. Like what we're doing, it's interesting. People are in our community. We have students in every country in the world. online for the past 10 years. So it's interesting how people are using these methodologies to train, even things like chunking, breaking things down in space review, to help you to consolidate short to long-term memory. So focusing on even gamers, they've broken it down nowadays, where before it was like golf. You would just do you would do, this is, people break it down, now they're breaking down into like these micro movements, these micro trainings, or these hand-eye coordination drills that you're doing with joystick and reaction time and optimizing their sleep. I would say two of the things that are really important for skill development are space repetition, that we know that it's not, that you could go fully immersed and do deep practice. And in terms of your learning curve, there's a forgetting curve, and that within 48 hours, you could lose up to 80% of something that you learn. And so the space review will help you to be able to retain it. And so reviewing something an hour or a day, 3 days, a week, a month afterwards, help you to ingrain that skill. We also know that also optimizing, obviously, your brain health is key. That sleep is a wonderful time to be able to reflect. I'm actually experimenting with some friends where we're doing this lucid dreaming experiment, where when you will spend 20 years of your life sleeping, probably 3 to 5 years fully dreaming, and that creative state of 3 to 5 years, it's when Paul McCartney created Yesterday, and Elias Howe created Sewing Machine, Mary Shelley created Frankenstein. I was when a lot of athletes, actually, like Jack Nicklaus, was in a slump, and he was shooting high 70s, and he just couldn't get out of it. And he was obsessed about it during the day, and his brain worked on it at night. His vivid dream about changing his grip, and the next day he shot like 65. And so, one thing people do for skill development, this might be interesting, is to practice that skill, and then introduce like a question right before you go to sleep. Like, have you guys had to get up the next morning, one time, especially early, and you set an alarm, and you're kind of thinking about it, why do I have to get up at 4:30 to catch this flight or whatever? And you wake up within a minute or 2 minutes of when that alarm goes off.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. That's the power of your human mind. I mean, think about the complexity. You gave it an intention, and you're able to wake up within minutes or seconds of that time. Why not, before you go to sleep, introduce a creative question or a skill development question? And so that way, when you're actually dreaming, you could actually come up with solutions for that.
Now, how do you do that, Jim? Do you just say it to yourself that, I need to figure out how to, get better with my nutrition, or I need to, how do you literally, now, do you just repeat it to yourself as you're sleeping? Do you write it down? What would be a technique to do this? How would you do this exactly?
So for me, what we talked about in the previous episode, my morning routine, right, we've heard if you won the day, you have to win that first hour of the day. I would spend a good focus on the last hour, focus on sleep, and then also the last part of that is creativity. So what I'll do is the night before, after I did my sleep hygiene and everything else, and I go into my meditation, I do this kind of mindfulness thing, and then I go into meditation, I just go right to bed. I'll introduce a question that I want, and this is kind of like an affirmation, but our words have a lot of power to it. Our brains are like these supercomputers, and our self-talk are the programs that it's going to run. And especially when you're in that altered state of consciousness in terms of dream state, it takes off a lot of the limits of our imagination. And so I actually say something verbally. Now, I happen to keep a dream journal right by my bedside. And I use it. It dubs also as a gratitude journal. So before, as part of my sleep routine, I'll rehearse what I was grateful for that day. It also is a great practice for episodic memory, to review your day throughout. I'll take 5 minutes before I go to bed and just mentally rehearse, how I woke up, that interview that I had, a little bit of my writing, what I ate that day, just to build my sensitivity of that, the episodes of how I went through my day. Because I feel like if your life is worth living, it's worth remembering. Sometimes these days, I don't know how you guys feel, but these days are blending together a little bit.
They're all melting together.
They are, right? And what's the weekend and what's every day is the same for a lot of people. So I'm making more of a conscious effort than I've done before, making it distinctive, because the reason why people feel a time distortion, maybe it's going too fast, is because there's nothing distinctive that's happening in their life like if you went to a restaurant or you went to a play or if you went to go see a movie, there's not these little milestones that make it distinctive. So it's all blending together, right? So what I do before I go to bed is I'll go through a gratitude thing, but before that, I'll go through a memory recall exercise. And this is actually like you guys are with physical fitness. This is my way of mentally fit, making me more mentally fit when it comes to my memory, as trained as it is. I'll go through and I'll just kind of go through some of how I spent, these hours of the day, just kind of rapid review. It doesn't have to be in deep detail. And then I'll go through it and just saying, what was I grateful for? Like, what are 3 wins that day, as little or as small, because that puts me into that gratitude mode, which is where a lot of people are on their phones and they're looking at how many people died today, or like they're looking at all these crazy stats. That puts such a cognitive load, an emotional load on you before you go to bed, and then you're expecting to be able to perform the next day. So I feel like what I do is I go through my memory, I pull out some gratitude, I'll write some of those things down, and then I'll introduce a question, just something for me to meditate on, before I be mindful about. And I don't obsess about the answer. That's the thing. And so an example could be who someone here is like in terms of learning is just like getting curious about this skill called sales or negotiation, right? Maybe putting a thought like you have a mentor of your mind, as somebody that represents that skill like really well, because then I'll find that I'll have like a dream about meeting that person, and having a conversation. Now, we're not even getting into like lucid dreaming and becoming aware of your dreams, controlling your dreams. I'm just saying, as you would saying, oh, I have to wake up at 4:45 tomorrow, and you happen to do that, introducing a question, and then just, meditating on it for a few minutes. You can write it down, certainly, because that makes it more taking it invisible and making it invisible. And then going to that soft dream state. And I find that if you remember your dreams, which is a whole different area, then a lot of that focus, it actually happens around that theme, and then when you are in your unconscious and you're in that dream state, you don't have the limits and the constraints, and you could go and explore and learn and experience, and you come out with an insight the next day and come out stronger. But the sleep, and even just physiologically, we know how important, that deep sleep and that REM sleep is for skill acquisition, consolidating short to learn, long-term memory, and so on.
Jim, you said something really powerful that I want to take you back to, and I'd like for you to elaborate or maybe share a story or an example, because I think it is so powerful and a lot of people don't understand how to do this, and that was shift the mindset of fear to opportunity. Can you go a little deeper on that, or maybe even share an example? So, because you said it real quick, and I know how powerful it is, and I know that most people don't understand how to exactly do that.
Yeah. So it starts in the book, and I want to definitely, we need to go over like the 3-part framework for becoming limitless. In the book on mindset, I talk about these lies, and I say these 7 lies to learning and human potential that are globally accepted, and nobody really questions them. It's just like, this is how things are. An example of that lie, for example, is that genius is born, right? Like if you believe that lie, and a lie for me stands for a limited idea entertained. Limited, because you guys know everything, I alliterate and make everything acronyms so people can remember it.
Hey, it works, man.
Those are called quickians.
Yeah, exactly. You have these quickisms and everything, but a lie is a limited idea entertained. It's not true that you're stupid, or it's not true that intelligence is fixed, or it's not true that you use 10% of your brain. And then I show the research that says the truth, and then I help people to install a new belief, because if you believe genius is born, then what are you going to do? If you're just financial geniuses, you're just born with it, or you don't have it, then you're just like screwed, right? So I show people how it's actually the opposite, which is actually genius is built, and I give people examples of why that's the case. Going back in terms of fear, again, your brain as a hunter-gatherer is hardwired. Your amygdala is getting hijacked all the time about what's threatening you, and it has to. Otherwise, people back then wouldn't have survived. The challenge is when there's no immediate threat, and we're just obsessing about it. And here's the thing, what controls our focus are the questions that we ask. And I know there's a couple of our videos that we put out with our interview talking about dominant questions and Will Smith's dominant question and everything. I would focus, if you start asking and training yourself what could hurt me, or what's threatening, or how many people died today, or how is this, then you're going to get, then your focus is going to be narrow on everything that's threatening, and you're not going to be focusing on the opportunity. So how do you shift your focus from what's fearful to possibility and opportunity? You shift your questions. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's that simple and it's that difficult at the same time, because you're literally rewiring your brain and training your brain to have a new dominant question. And instead of like, oh my God, how is this? And the spirals down, all the things that's going wrong, everything that's going wrong, your focus goes there and you create more of those behaviors that make that self-fulfilling. Now, we know your thoughts are the language of your mind and your feelings are the language of your body. So you need to control your psychology and your physiology to be in that state, because opportunity, really luck, as people call it, is when opportunity and preparation meet. Now, you're not going to be prepared or even see that opportunity because of your news feed, going back to that algorithm. If you're just engaging with everything that's bad and dark, you got to start retraining your brain to see opportunity in times of crisis. And that's what leaders do, right? We know that all the huge amount, the disproportionate amount of millionaires were created during Great Depressions and everything else like that, because they look for straightforward opportunity. And when they're looking at opportunity, that also mitigates the fear of taking action. And I really do believe that if failure is not an option, then neither is success. Meaning that, I think Seth Godin said that failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the success. But if you're just looking at what could go wrong or what you're risking, then you're never going to be able to make a change in this new environment. And I'm using this metaphor of cocooning, like we're going through this mass transformation, because again, we're alone with our thoughts, we're alone with our fears, we're alone with our doubts. And if we indulge in those things, then we're in fight or flight. We're not going to take action. How do you get out of it? You change your psychology or physiology. So make sure you have your soundtrack. You imagine people are like cheering for you in a big stadium. You play the music to whatever your Rocky music or whatever gets you pumped up, because every life, like learning, is all state dependent, as we've discussed. And then control your psychology with the power of your questions and train yourself to say, where's the gift in this? Where's the silver lining? So it puts you in a more, state that you can respond to as opposed to react to. And then where's the opportunity in this? And then you can look at things through good analytical ability and see the trends of where's the future of work, where's the future of learning, where's the future of this, and things are moving in this direction. So and then you could forecast, like Gretzky, right? He's not going to where the puck is, he's going to where the puck is going. Then you could forecast to where these trends are going, and then put your laser focus on where can I serve, because the idea here is, if you want to become, my mindset has always been, if you want to become a millionaire, then you have to be able to serve 1 million people, and whether that's, correct, like it's like exact 1-to-1, the idea here is like, how can you add massive value to people who are struggling, suffering? What problem can I solve? Because that's all an entrepreneur is a professional problem solver, right? They're offering a creative solution to something that keeps people up at night. And you isolate, saying, what are the conversations that are going? These are questions I would be asking to put an opportunity. What's keeping people up at night? In my industry right now, where does the opportunity lay? And your mind might come up with like, I don't know. But then like, okay, then I would ask another guy, if I did know and I was looking at this, where is the possibility? Where is the opportunity? Where can I add value? Where are people struggling? And do a SWOT analysis. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the opportunities here? What are the threats here? And then you seeing things through a new point of view, and you're empowered by asking questions, saying, what do I need to focus on right now that's going to give me the highest return? What do I need to shift in my business, my time, my talent, my investments, my treasure, to be able to mitigate, the damage here, and also take care of my bills right now, and then, build something also for the future. Now, I know it sounds like a stream of consciousness rant, but my main idea here is you're asking new questions so you get new answers, as opposed to asking questions that spiral you down into hopelessness, saying, why is this happening right now? Why is this happening to me? Because none of that's going to serve anybody, those answers.
Now, you mentioned focus a lot, and how to focus on the right things, but a lot of people are having trouble just focusing, period, right now. It's a life is distracting to begin with, but I think when we're stressed out, we're probably easier to be distracted, probably because it maybe gives us a temporary sense of we feel a little better while we're distracted in the moment. Are there some real simple practices? I mean, you mentioned focus being a muscle that you can train. I know with exercise, you have to practice an exercise many times before you get good at it. How do you practice focus?
Yeah. Well, I know you had you and I had an individual on our show, our podcast, Don DePani,
Right.
right? And it's funny, I know that because your background is so recognizable there, and those clips and those things that go viral. And I talk about him in my book a little bit on the chapter of focus. I asked him why he moved here in New York City for the very reason you might hear sirens in the background, because I also live here. I was like, of all the places you could live, he was like, New York City, like anybody could be focused when they're living in like this rural community, mountaintop. But, where's the most density of distractions and noise and people and energies? And he was like, New York City. And he used that opportunity to practice his concentration, and that's one of the reasons why simple practices like meditation work. Like, I don't meditate to get into a Zen enlightened state. That's not my purpose for meditating. I do it because every single time my focus goes somewhere else, that's an opportunity for me to be in the mental gym, take a breath, bring it back to my breath, or bring it back to my mantra, or bring it back to my mindfulness in the present. And it builds my focus and concentration muscles. So that's something very simple to be able to do. Another way of building your focus is there's two ways, right? You first of all, stop building your distraction muscles, because that's a problematic in itself, because if that's the strongest muscle, that's where everything is always going to go, right? So we talk about don't touch your phone the first hour of the day and all the things that are distracting us, right? The other way of doing it is it's two ways. Stop building your distraction muscles, because whatever you're constantly doing, you're getting better at. Second way is to actually build your focus muscles. Now, how do you build it? You give yourself opportunities to be distracted and you still yet focus. So when it really matters, you could focus at will, if you will. The other thing you could do is just a simple practice of presence. The reason why I create these morning routines where I'm making my bed is I'm just using it as an opportunity first thing in the morning to focus for 2 minutes straight. And so I'm making it immaculate, because how you do anything is how you do everything. The reason why I brush my teeth or I eat with the opposite hand in the morning is it forces, not only does it challenge a different part of my brain, because most people can't do it and think about other things because it's novel to them, it forces them to focus. So these are little things that you can build into your day, like eating with the opposite hand or brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, that trains your focus, maybe even first thing in the morning. Because how you do anything is how you do everything, so that focus shows up when you need to read, or the focus shows up when you need to be in a Zoom meeting and pay attention to things.
Interesting.
So I do believe it's a muscle, and the way to do it, you could do it in meditation, or you can make your life a daily practice of meditation and bring that kung fu into, working out, into brushing your teeth. And one of the ways you can get present that's really simple exercise to do is just come up, take a breath when you need to be able to focus, and then point out 3 things that you hear right now. 3 things that you hear in the present. It could be like someone honking in the background. It could be the air conditioner. It could be, some person sitting next to you. And then think about 3 things that you see. If you open your eyes, what are 3 things that you see right now? What are 3 things that you feel in your body? Either internally, or you feel like, you see yourself sitting on this couch, or you're something that's external. And then 3 things that you smell, 3 things that you might be tasting, and it brings your focus into the present. And that powerful presence tends to improve your focus, and it tends to improve your comprehension, tends to improve your memory, because you have that force multiplier focus coming first.
I like that. That's something very applicable. I find for myself I could see how that could help, but I also find sometimes just recognizing that I'm distracted can be difficult. Like by the time, oh crap, I'm distracted right now. How long have I been distracted for? 15 minutes. Does that get easier the more you practice this?
It's just like building your body, and you guys know the answer to this. In the beginning, when you're doing a new routine or a new exercise, it feels foreign, it feels novel. But then as you get stronger, things can get easier. This whole thing, even when I talk about the lies that use 10% of your brain, because you see it on television shows or Netflix, but whatever, that we actually use 100% of our brain, just because our brain's part of our body, and we use 100% of our body too. It's just that if somebody has to hike up a big hill, or they're going through, somebody who's physically fit like you guys, you could do it without much effort or spending a lot of energy, and it could look like ease to somebody else who has that level of mental physical fitness. They're going to have to be able, they're still using 100% of their body, but they're not strong in those areas, and they don't have the strategies and the conditioning. Same thing with mental fitness. We still use 100% of our brain, but some people, when they're reading, they don't expend as much energy because they're just mentally fit, or when they're remembering names or anything else. Same thing with focus. And so the reason why I'm always wearing like a brain shirt, or I'm always pointing to my brain, is not only is it great branding, and I know that, and just I built my whole brand on like $20 shirts and people pointing to their head, but I do it because what you see, you take care of. Like you guys can see your biceps, you can see your abs, you can see your hair. What you see, you take care of in general. People take care of their clothes, they take care of it, but they don't see their brain. So I put it on my shirts, I point to my brain, because I'm just reminding people, hey, take care of this too. This controls everything. And going back to self-awareness, I agree that a big part of transformation is just self-awareness of our thoughts, having awareness of our habits, and not just the habits of your behavior, the methods, having, in terms of what triggers you in relationships, or self-awareness of your self-talk, or self-awareness of your identity. Like if I was to say, I am, like, what's the first words that come out of in your mind when you say, I am this? Awesome. Right? But most people aren't conscious of those, and you can't make a transformation. You can't change something unless you know where you currently stand, right? It's just like your money. You can't manage something, or your body. You can't manage something unless you can measure it. But most people aren't measuring like their thoughts. They're taking an audit on like what they're saying to themselves or what they believe is possible.
Very good. Are you familiar with the quote, "The man in the arena"? Mm-hmm. That long one, right? And it talks about how it's not the critic that counts, right? It's the person in the arena, doing all the work. And something that we dealt with as trainers a lot of times was people's own inner critics, their own negative thoughts about themselves. I can see that probably being more common nowadays. How do you fight that? Because oftentimes the most difficult obstacle to overcome is yourself. It's that inner person saying you can't, you're not good enough. Do you have any practices that can help with that?
Okay, so one practice is a practice in perspective. Like I do these thought experiments constantly, and I really think that more people should schedule some white space in your life to be creative and to do not just input stuff, but actually create. And so we've talked about note taking and note making, but a lot of people are always listening, and I'm all for it, like podcasts and videos and reading books, but also it's not just input, it's what you're outputting. Like you're taking what you already know and that wisdom and using your imagination, because knowledge is, right, we know that imagination is more powerful than knowledge, that knowledge is what is, imagination is what could be. So taking time to be creative in that space. And I think when you're doing that creativity, you could do these thought experiments. And part of my thought experiments are like fast forwarding to the end of my life. And, especially with what's going on in the world, it makes you more cognizant of your mortality. You know what I mean? In terms of like when you seeing like how things are connected and how, you don't take things for granted with everybody, with challenges that people are going through. And one of the ways to get rid of the external critics tactically is to fast forward to the end of your life. And like when you're taking your final breaths in your life, and it's not a pleasant conversation. So it's a little bit, and it's not like positive thinking, but imagine like we're taking our final breaths. What's most important to us in that time? And it's not going to be, I promise you, it's not going to be the expectations of other people. It's not going to be our own fears. What's going to have mattered in our life is how we lived, how we laughed, how we learned, how we loved in that moment. So I'm saying like allow yourself to go through those thought experiments and feeling that and going to the end of our life and saying like, what do I want people to talk about like in my eulogy? Because like, what are they going to say about me? And I spent an inordinate amount of time at senior centers. As I train at the Cleveland Clinic, the Center for Brain Health, working with people early stage dementia. And I do that because I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, and I do it also because I'm polishing up their memories. But I'm also like learning a lot because there's so much wisdom there, in other people's lifetimes of learning. And then I also hear a lot of regrets. And that comes out so often when people are just like at that stage, and the regret everybody has in some form is that I lessened or I limited my life because of the expectations of somebody else. And I know we know that, but to be able to feel that, and we don't usually have, like, for example, I wrote this book. I don't talk about this, but I got into an accident and I almost died. Right. And that shifts things perspective wise. And I honestly asked myself, like, what am I leaving behind here? And one of the biggest regrets that I thought about me is that, I didn't write a book. I'm a reading teacher. And I was like, wow, and then right away I signed that book deal and everything else like that, because I was just like, and that forced me into a new path. I waited 3 decades for it. I had this experience and I was like, oh man, like I regardless of what people think about it or say, or critics or anything else, like I'm going to do this because I want to be able to pass this on to, I want my grandchildren eventually to be able to read this book. And that purpose was so big for me. And so what I would say is the critic stuff, we know it intellectually, but if you fuel your life on other people's expectations, you're going to run out of gas. And that would be a horrible way to live. I would say that really sensitize yourself that we have one life here. We have like one life. Why aren't we running towards our dreams like we're on fire at this point? Because everybody's always going to have an expectation of, and that's what puts you in that box. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that, if you could free yourself from the concerns of others, then you'll truly be liberated to be able to not dim your light because it's shining in somebody else's eyes. Like when I hear these stories at these senior centers, it's like, I didn't pursue this relationship because of what other people would think. Or I went into this career because my parents expected me to. I went to this school because they, whatever. And so that would be the thing that I would learn the earliest. And the best time to do it is like early on, but the second best time is now. It's just less and less. Think about like for focusing on the things that really matter most.
Jim, you just mentioned self-awareness. I just recently did a full episode on self-awareness, and I attribute much of any success that I've had in my life to this. And one of the questions I got asked was, what are some ways that I have developed self-awareness? Do you have some tips on how to develop self-awareness?
Yeah. So I think success comes in 2 areas. It's having the curiosity to know yourself, which is self-awareness. And then once you know who you are, the second part is, after you have the curiosity to know yourself, is have the courage to be yourself, which we're talking about. Like some people are self-aware of who they are, but they are not being themselves because of other people's expectations or opinions and what are people going to think and so on. And so I think those are the 2 keys. Going back to self-awareness, what for me helps me to be more self-aware is not only the meditation, the journaling, the talk therapy or whatever. First of all, usually self-awareness for me is triggered by external stressors. We know who we are. It's easy, and you know how other people are based on when they're stressed. Like everybody can be positive and kind when everything's going good, right? But at a more core, when things are being difficult, more of that shows up, right? There's this idea that, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? Orange juice. Why? Because that's what's on the inside. But it's usually the stressors that show you what's on the inside and what you've developed in terms of character and competence and consciousness. So besides the obvious things like journaling and therapy and, meditation that give you self-awareness, what I use is the limitless model, because it's a set of distinctions to show you really who you are and how you're operating. And if I could just walk you through it right now, really quickly.
Perfect.
This is a 3-part framework for doing the impossible. And that sounds pretty audacious. So I'll just break it down for people. Limitless, again, this book was mostly a book of methodology on accelerated learning, speed reading, learning languages, changing your habits, all that stuff that we've talked about in your previous episode. I realized that 100% of people wouldn't get the results because they were only focused on methods. And a lot of people know how to work out. A lot of people know what they should be doing for their sleep, but they're not doing those things because common sense is not common practice. So where I want to build self-awareness around are the 2 areas that come before the methods. What keeps us from doing the methods? Because self-awareness is part of like, why am I procrastinating? Why don't I believe in myself, right? And so here are the 3 forces. I want everybody, let's make this interactive with us and everyone listening. You could keep it to yourself, but I want you to think about one area of your life where you feel limited, right? Where do you feel like you're in a box? Because limitless is not about being perfect. It's about progressing and advancing beyond what you believe is possible. So it is in a relationship. Is it in your career? Is it in your impact? Is it in your physical strength and vitality? Is it in your learning, your memory, your reading, your ability, your identity about how smart you are? Where do you feel like you're in a box? Now that box, as everyone's listening, I want you to think about a specific box where you're not getting traction, right? You're not making progress. And even if you're exerting effort. Now that box, by definition, is three-dimensional, right? Every box or cube is three-dimensional. And the three dimensions that keep you in that box are the three elements to the limitless model. And how I'm going to represent it for everybody is three simple circles that intersect. So I want you to imagine, or even better yet, if you could write it out on a notebook, draw three circles and they all intersect and they overlap. It's a Venn diagram for the people who are familiar with Venn diagrams. What it looks like is Mickey Mouse, two ears that cross over, and then a face that intersects with all of those, right? So there's overlap between the three circles, and then the middle point, they're all intersecting. All right, so three circles. Now the last circle, three M's, obviously. The last M is methods, right? Now the methods I teach in the book are the focus, speed reading, memory, critical thinking, studying, and so on. But you need the right limitless mindset and a limitless, the first M is mindset. All right, so the first circle is your mindset. And so it's not abstract. Your mindset, as I'm defining it, is your set of assumptions and attitudes about something. It could be your attitudes and assumptions about the world. It could be your attitudes, assumptions about politics. It could be attitudes, assumptions about entrepreneurship or money. It could be attitudes, assumptions about what's going on right now with what's going on in the world. It could be your attitudes, assumptions about education, and attitudes, assumptions about learning. It could be attitudes, about assumptions mostly about self-awareness yourself. So what would fall in that category? Here are three areas of self-awareness. What do you believe is possible? What do you believe you're capable of? What do you believe you deserve? All right. So somebody could believe that it's possible to remember 100 people's names because they've seen me, do that live in an audience, but they might not believe they're capable of it. Or people could believe that somebody could make a lot of money. They could believe they're capable of it, but they might not believe they deserve it, right? So they're still going to be stuck in that box, even if they have the best investing methods, the best memory methods or anything. They're still stuck in the box because the mindset doesn't allow them outside that box. The second M, right? The third M is methods. The first M is mindset. The second M that will keep you in that box if you don't unlimit yourself is your motivation. Now, here's the thing. You could have a mindset that anything is possible, you're capable, you deserve it, and you get the methods for building that body or the right methods for learning to read 3 times faster. But if you have zero motivation, you're still stuck in that box. Now, most people, I was talking about lies. There are lies around mindset, and I talk about the 7 lies that hold us back, and we disrupt them through a process of unlimiting. Like unlimiting is what the book's all about. Unlimiting is a word I coined years ago, and it's the active removal of limits, as opposed to unlimited. You can say somebody is unlimited, but once you're unlimiting something, you're actively removing the limits. And where do you want to remove the limits? In your mindset, your motivation, and the methods. All right. And now when you unleash those, then you can become limitless. Let's go to the lies, limited ideas entertained around motivation. Right? Just like in mindset, intelligence is fixed, genius is born, use 10% of your brain, all things that limit us. There lies around motivation. And one of the things, honestly, is that you have to enjoy that thing because the evidence, now I'm talking to everyone who procrastinates, that's what keeps them in the box. Everything is possible. You don't even know what to do, but you're still stuck in the box because you procrastinate, right? The evidence that someone is motivated is not what you say. It's not what you feel. It's what you do. If you are consistently motivated, your kids aren't motivated unless you're consistently cleaning their room or if they're consistently studying. You're not motivated if you're not working out consistently. It doesn't matter what you say or feel or anything, right? So let's say I have a friend who wakes up at 4:30 every morning. What do? They work out. And I was like, that's interesting. And I was doing the research for this book. I was like, you're obviously very motivated. You never miss a day of working out at 4:30 in the morning. He's like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, okay. I was like, can I ask you a question? Do you enjoy waking up at 4:30 in the morning? He was like, no, I really actually hate it. I'm not a morning person. I'm like, that's weird. Because then you must enjoy working out. That's why you wake up so early. He's like, no, that's actually hate working out more than I enjoy waking up early in the morning. And I'm like, okay. So then it's a lie that because this person's very motivated, been doing that for most of their life. So motivation doesn't mean you enjoy the process. Now, I would always choose, going back to our own personal power, to bring joy into a workout, to bring joy into studying, to bring joy into whatever I have to do consistently, because if I'm going to do it, I might as well enjoy it. But it's not a requirement. And then my mind went like this. Let's go back into my white space. I schedule time in the day just to be creative, to create. And I was like, okay, let's do this thought experiment. If we were going to build the ultimate motivated human being together, what does it take? What are the elements for ultimate motivation? Where it's not just Bradley Cooper taking a pill and he surge of motivation, but 24 hours later, it's like a warm bath. It just cools down. You have to hype yourself up. And I was like, here's the formula for ultimate motivation. It is P times E times S3. P times E times S3. And I realized that, the book is based on, the latest neuroscience applied towards accelerated learning and cognitive performance, but it's also based on 28 years of working with everyone from children with learning challenges to seniors with dementia to athletes and actors and business owners and so on. And you see that genius leaves clues and that you need these three elements there. And if someone's not motivated, usually one of these three things are missing. So what's P? The P stands for purpose. Now, I don't mean your life purpose, although I do address it in the book. I mean a reason, right? A purpose means, if you look at the definition, it means a reason to do something, right? A reason behind something. And most people, they know cognitively, let's use the example of working out for your listeners, or maybe it's reading 45 minutes a day. We talked about last time, that if you want to read a book a week, the average person, has to read about 45 minutes a day. You could triple your reading speed, it's 15 minutes a day. But leaders are readers, right? And so let's say it's reading or it's working out, something simple that we all know it's good for your thing. Remember, I did that Insta story I showed you guys with Will Smith. I was like, what are the two things you do every day to perform at your best? He's like, I run, I read. You do something physical, you do something mental, in terms of exercise. I'm like, that's cool. So running or reading, right? Or exercising and reading. But if you're not motivated to do it, you're not doing it consistently, even though it gives you big results. Like if you're reading every day, you learn new things. Somebody wrote a book that compressed decades into days and you save all this time, you can make more money and so on. Knowledge is not only power, it's profit. The faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. You have all these reasons intellectually, but if you don't feel those reasons, you're still not going to work out. You know what I mean? If you don't feel the benefit, because my friend who works out feels viscerally in his body because of his life experience, like the rewards that come from staying fit, right? And also the consequence of not doing that. Like I have an acquaintance, not a friend, but an acquaintance that wouldn't change his lifestyle for anything. Did all the bad stuff, right? The smoking, the drinking, all this stuff, right? And everyone around him said, hey, you should really do, this, and nothing, all the methods, right? And then one day he has a heart attack and almost dies, and triple bypass surgery and everything, to cut him open, 12 hours on the table, whatever. And still goes back to smoking and doing all the things he was doing. And then I see him on the a couple years later, and he's like picture of health. I didn't even recognize him, right? And he looked so much younger and everything. I was like, dude, like what happened, man? I was like, you didn't change. Like I changed my lifestyle. This. I was like, well, why? I mean, you didn't even do that after you had like a heart attack. He was like, one day I came home and my daughter was in hysterics. She was crying. And we didn't know what was wrong with her. And then she was like, she had this dream that her dad wasn't going to be there to walk her down the aisle and be with her grandkid, like all that stuff. And once he heard that, he found a purpose, and it wasn't intellectually, because he knew everyone knows reasons to do these things, but he felt it. So the P in motivation is purpose. That if you're not starting that business, then your fear is overriding your purpose in terms of benefits or everything else like that. It's other people's expectation. So tap in your purpose. Now I go back to this thought experiment. We're building the ultimate motivated human being. I was like, okay, if someone just has purpose, will they always be motivated? Will they always consistently act? And I was like, no, they could be missing the E, P times E times S3. And the E stands for energy. So like, this is not usually talked about when we talk about the power of habits and routines and everything, but somebody could want to work out, but if they haven't slept, let's say they have a newborn, they haven't slept in 3 nights, they're not going to be very motivated to physically exercise, right? Let's make a simple example. Let's say somebody needs to study their craft, learn a new subject for a new job or whatever, 45 minutes a day, but they ate a big crappy meal and they're in a food coma, or they're around energy vampires or stealing their energy, their batteries and everything else. They're not going to be very motivated to start the business or to read because their energy. So that's why we talk about 10 keys for mental vitality to get rid of, brain fatigue and everything. And then my mind was like, okay, somebody has purpose. They have limitless energy also. They feel the purpose. They have limitless energy. They slept really well and everything else that we teach in the book. Will they always act and be motivated? I was like, no, one more thing is missing. S3. right? 3 S's, small, simple steps, which we've talked about already, that a lot of people won't be able to motivate it because that thing is just too big. It's too intimidating. They're not motivated because it's too abstract, and a confused mind doesn't do anything. So again, it's not working out an hour a day for somebody. That's too big for someone who's never worked out. Getting on your running shoes, as we talked about. Maybe it's not reading, it's like studying an hour a day. Maybe it's a small, simple step, opening the book, reading one line, flossing one tooth, right? Nobody's going to stop there. And again, the key to get your small, simple step, ask yourself a question. Questions are always the answer. What is the tiniest action that I could take to give me progress towards this goal where I can't fail? Because it requires so little energy, so little effort. Now, here's the aha, guys. These 3 circles, mindset, motivation, and methods. What I'm saying to everybody who's listening is that if you are in that box, those 3 forces are keeping you in that box. And you have to narrow down and unlimit yourself in that area. Otherwise, if you don't have the mindset, you're stuck in that box. If you don't have the motivation, you're stuck in that box. Or if you're using old methods of starting a business, or old methods of working out, or old methods of nutrition, or old methods of reading, you're still gonna be stuck in that box, right? Now, here's the aha, where mindset crosses over with motivation, right? I'm gonna give you 3 I's to match the 3 M's. Where mindset crosses over with motivation, you have inspiration. Now, there are mindset experts. There are mindset books, great book by Dr. Carol Dweck called Mindset, right? There are motivational speakers, motivational books, motivational experts, right? Where they cross over, you have inspiration, and you have inspirational, inspiring speakers, inspiring books, inspiring movies. Inspiring movie will change your mindset. It'll give you some energy and motivation, right? But it's lacking. People be inspired, but they're not including the methods. So they have inspiration, but they don't know what to do, right? Where mindset crosses over with methods, you believe everything is possible in your mind. You know what to do in the methods in your mind. That's ideation, and it just stays an idea. Incubating as an idea, you're ideating because you lack the motivation, still stuck in that box. And finally, where motivation crosses over with methods, motivation, you have the purpose, you have the energy, you know what to do, the methods, the process for marketing, for starting a business, for being fit, for reading faster, whatever it is. That's implementation. Yet you could still be stuck in that box because you're only going to implement to the degree you believe is possible, to what you believe you are capable of, what you believe you deserve. The 4th I, and this is the goal of the book, is the middle, where all 3 M's and all 3 I's intersect. That sweet spot is the 4th I, integration. Integration, like integer or integral, means you're whole, like a whole number, right? Integration is just who you are, and that's the limitless state. Now, this framework here is what I offer to people when they are stuck, to take the judgment out of themselves and the self-critic and just say, hey, look at it through this lens. Am I not achieving or progressing in my finances, in my impact, in my energy level, my fitness, in my learning, my memory, because it's my mindset? I not believe it's possible, and I not believe that I'm capable of, and I not believe I deserve it. Then you could address the bottleneck or the limitation. Or is it my motivation? Do I know the purpose, but I'm not feeling the purpose? Or am I lacking energy? It's just like I'm around my family members that are just stealing my energy and my dreams. Or am I just stressed and it's taking a lot of my energy? Or am I not getting good REM and deep sleep? Then you get to address it there. Or am I not taking small, simple steps? Or I might just have those in place, but I'm using really old methods, right? And so my method, and this applies for yourself and as an explanatory schema for your kids. Because if they're not achieving, do they not have the mindset or the belief? Do they not have a growth mindset? Do they have a fixed mindset? Or do they not have purpose to study the periodic table? Like they don't find relevancy to it. Or are they just really tired because they're playing video games, whatever, right? Are they not breaking down in small, simple steps to clean their room, putting one sock into the hamper or something like that, or making their bed in one small, simple step? Or are they using old methods for your team, for your kids? Or if you're going to role model somebody who's a genius, right? Then go through a financial genius, business genius, a learning genius, whatever. What is their mindset? What do they believe is possible? What do they believe is capable? What are their small, simple steps? What is their purpose? And it just creates a model, a framework that I really feel like should have been required reading back in school, because it just gives you a blueprint for how your mind works so you could work your mind.
Excellent. Whew. That's a lot of great information, just like the last podcast. Yeah,
no, I appreciate you guys.
Always a great time, Jim.
Always a good time. We'll make sure to plug all your stuff at the beginning when we do the intro.
Can I give people a quick action?
Absolutely.
I challenge everyone. Well, first of all, the book is available at limitlessbook.com with all the bonuses that we give. We're giving 100% away of author proceeds to charity. And so know that when you get an education and you help your brain, it's helping other brains through Alzheimer's research and education for kids. So limitlessbook.com. And I would challenge everyone to take a screenshot of this episode like you did before and tag like everybody here and tag myself at Jim Kwik, KWIK, post it. And the fastest way to become limitless, to be able to learn something, is to teach it to somebody else. So share one new, small, simple step or one idea, or take a picture of your notes, post it on social media, tag us all so we see it. And I'll repost some of my favorites because I think we learn to earn, to return, to be able to give back. And I think when you sharing with your friends and your family and your followers, it'll help them also as well. Because as fear is contagious and viruses are contagious, so is wisdom. And so is kindness, and be able to share that. And I'll actually repost some of my favorites, and I'll actually gift a copy of the book to one random person just to, for fun. And so I appreciate you guys. It's so great to talk to you guys again.
Awesome. Great.
Congratulations on everything. I did your show quite a while back, and I see you guys everywhere, and it's well deserved.
Thank you. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun, and I'm glad to see that you're healthy and safe, even though you're at the epicenter of this whole thing right now. And hearing all those ambulances, I was like, man, what's going on over there? But
my final words for everybody here is this. Again, do not downgrade your dreams to meet this current situation. Upgrade your mindset, your motivation, your methods to be able to meet those dreams. And be too optimistic to scare, to be too confident to doubt, and let's just stick together on this.
Thank you. Thanks
Beautiful,
again.
Jim.
Much appreciated.
Good talking, brother.
Thank you.